First of all, I don't want to be misunderstood. So, in the earlier period, I said the AKP failed to denounce action by the Turkish Constitutional Court. At that time, it certainly was not in a position to control that court. So, that's fair to say that the AKP is not responsible for the closure of the DTP, although it could have done a great deal more in response. But since that time, many of the initiatives that we've seen, including the military initiatives that we've seen both in the southeast and in northern Iraq, have absolutely had the support, direct and active support of the AKP. This is not a question of AKP unable to control the military. This is a question of the civilian government in support of the military, specifically advocating the militarization of this question as a result of, first, one incident in which 13 Turkish soldiers were killed over a year ago, and now more recent incidents where there were larger numbers of deaths, but again, among Turkish soldiers. We're not talking about attacks on civilians. That has occasioned a massive military operation. Now, what we're talking about, the KCK operations, are the civilian side, the police side of that military campaign. So this is entirely in the AKP's control. This is entirely something which is being directed by the AKP, which absolutely does control today the state security organs and the police powers of the state. So it is the AKP that is deciding to engage in this crackdown. And the explanation, in my mind, is first of all, the AKP is a very effective political force, in part because it is not the departure that some think from the Kemalist model. It's true that the AKP is distinct from previous governments in Turkey in its line with respect to religious pluralism and religious rights. But on the question of nationalism, the AKP is absolutely cut from the same cloth as other political parties have been in Turkey. And in their view, basically, the solution to the Kurdish problem lies in their kind of Kurds. So if you're prepared to be a Kurdish political activist within the AKP government, within the AKP's rubric, under their umbrella, pursuing their policies and their understanding of the solution, quote unquote, solution to the, again, quote, Kurdish problem, then they're more than happy to do business with you. But if you insist on autonomy, if you insist on organizing Kurds outside of the AKP government's rubric, in their own party, with their own political definition of their rights, with their own sense of what it is that their demands are, with their own sense of what they're seeking, and with their own sets of demands, well, then you're not the kind of you're not the kind of Kurd that the AKP government is prepared to embrace. And so what we're seeing is entirely consistent, in my mind, with the stance that the AKP has taken. On the one hand, it is worth noting that they have actually been better in some respects than previous governments. This is, of course, only to say that previous governments were that much worse, so to the point where speaking the Kurdish language, using Kurdish names, singing and recording music in the Kurdish language and so forth had been previously criminalized. So some of this was liberalized, and this was the source of hope. And indeed, again, in 2009, the AKP government introduced what they defined as the Kurdish opening. The president, Abdullah Gül, beginning in 2008, went out and tried to allegedly engage with Kurdish communities in the southeast. But again, this is the AKP engaging in an initiative from within its own ranks to essentially internalize the Kurdish question and turn it into part of an AKP platform or part of an AKP agenda. When that failed, basically what the AKP has done since that time is return absolutely to form, to the same form as all previous political parties in the Turkish context since the 1980 military coup, which is to say treat the Kurdish question as a military and counterterrorism question and engage in very far-reaching police action to basically break up the possibility of ordinary civilian, peaceful political organizing around the Kurdish identity in Turkey.